Today we're diving into a really powerful idea that explains something a lot of us feel, why some people seem to keep getting better and better, while others just hit a wall. It's a game changer, so let's get right into it.
So, does this sound familiar? You're putting in all the hours, you're grinding away, working harder than ever, but you feel like your skills aren't really getting any sharper. It's like you've hit a professional plateau. It's super frustrating, right? And the crazy part is, the problem usually isn't about a lack of effort at all. You see, the solution isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter in a very specific way. The most successful people and the most successful teams, they get this. They intentionally switch between two totally different modes, one for getting things done and another for getting better.
All right, so let's break this down. What do we actually mean when we say execution mode versus growth mode? Let's define them.
Okay, the biggest difference between these two really just comes down to the goal. In execution mode, your mission is simple: deliver results, period. You lean on what you already know how to do well, and your main focus is to not make any mistakes. But in growth mode, the goal completely flips. It is not about perfection, it's all about making progress. You're using deliberate practice, and you actually expect to make mistakes because, let's be honest, that's where the real learning happens.
Execution mode is basically what keeps the lights on. You know, think about those big moments. You're presenting to the board, you're negotiating a huge client contract, you're running that high-stakes meeting. This is performance time. Your game face is on, and you are laser-focused on hitting your targets without a single slip-up. And look, this mode is absolutely essential for success.
Growth mode, though, that's where you actually get better. It's not the big presentation itself, it's all the prep that happens behind the scenes. It's when you're role-playing those tough conversations with a coworker, or you're practicing one specific skill over and over. It's when you're asking for pointed, honest feedback. The goal here isn't to be perfect, not at all. It's to experiment, to learn, and to improve.
Now, to make this idea really stick, there's a fantastic metaphor that just perfectly captures this whole dynamic between the two modes.
Just think about an airplane. For any aircraft to do its job, it needs two critical places: the runway, where it takes off and flies, and the hangar, where it gets serviced and upgraded. It turns out, we kind of need those two places too. And this just lays it out perfectly. The runway, that's your execution mode. The engines are at full power, everything's been checked, and there is zero margin for error. You have to perform flawlessly. But the hangar, that's your growth mode. It's that dedicated space and time to get better, to do maintenance, to install some upgrades. In the hangar, mistakes aren't just allowed, they're part of the process. They lead to learning, which makes sure the performance on the runway is perfect.
And here's the most important point of all. You absolutely need both. If you're always on the runway, constantly performing, you are going to burn out or break down. It's inevitable. But on the other side, if you never leave the hangar, if you're always preparing and never actually performing, well, you're never going to fly. It's all about finding that critical balance between the two.
Okay, so the concept is pretty clear, right? But how do we actually create these hangar moments in our incredibly busy work lives? Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the practical steps for building that time for growth. You know, for growth mode to actually work, it turns out you need 4 key ingredients. First, you've got to believe you can improve. That's the whole growth mindset thing. Second, you need real motivation, a clear desire to get better at something specific. Third, you need a method. Just repeating something isn't enough. It has to be deliberate practice. And finally, and this one is so important, you need safety. A low-stakes environment where it's okay to mess up. So let's see how this plays out in the real world, at a super high level. There's this great story about a chief operating officer who is leading a massive company-wide transformation. So, his calendar was jam-packed with execution mode stuff, right? He was tracking KPIs every week, focusing on flawless delivery, making sure absolutely nothing slipped through the cracks. But he knew that to really win in the long term, he had to build in growth mode. So he created these things he called experiment sessions. This was their hangar time, a space for leaders to test out AI forecasting or run workshops to challenge old ways of doing things. And the result? Well, sure, some of the experiments failed, but because it was a low-stakes environment, those lessons were priceless. Over time, the whole organization built new muscles. They could make decisions faster, assess risk better, and they developed a real culture of innovation. He wasn't just managing the present, he was building their ability to totally dominate the future. Now, here's the big challenge that most of us run into. Our companies, our workplaces, they often worship a flawless execution culture. And look, that's great for ensuring quality today, but it can accidentally just kill the experimentation and innovation we need for tomorrow. It basically keeps everyone stuck on the runway all the time.
So how in the world do you create growth in a high-pressure job like that? Well, you can build what you might call low-stakes islands. These are safe spaces, like simulations or peer coaching sessions. You can also change how you reflect after a big performance. Instead of asking what went wrong, try asking, what could I do just a little bit better next time? And for any leaders out there, the most powerful thing you can do is model this yourself. Share a mistake you made in your own hangar moment and what you learned. That makes it okay for everyone else.
Okay, with all of that in mind, let's bring this all back home. Back to you.
I want you to take a second and be really honest with yourself. Think about your last week or your last month. Where did you spend most of your time? Were you constantly on the runway, just performing and delivering? Or did you have any dedicated time in the hangar to refuel, upgrade, and get better? And here's the next question. What's one small step you could take, maybe even this week, to build just a little more of that crucial hangar time? Maybe it's blocking off 30 minutes to practice a new software. Or maybe it's just asking a colleague you trust for some real feedback. How can you carve out that space?
Because here's the big takeaway from all of this. Your improvement doesn't have a finish line. By learning to consciously shift between executing and growing, between that runway and that hangar, you can make sure that your best work is always still ahead of you.